Ed Bernstein Show. Now, here's Ed.
The Vegas Golden Knights, it's more than a hockey game. It's a business also. And with me to talk about the business of hockey is our CEO and president of the team, Kerry Bubolz. Welcome.
Ed, thanks for having me.
What is your job? What does the president of the team do?
Well, it's everything but what we do on the ice, right? And so I work closely with George McPhee and Kelly McCrimmon. They take care of everything that we do from a hockey perspective. So our NHL roster, our AHL roster, all of the liaisoning with our scouts literally around the globe. And then I run the business organization. So for the Knights, that would be all of our ticketing and all of our sponsorships, all of our premium, all of our fan experience, community relations. And then really as a face of the organization out in the community is an important part of what I do. I sit on several boards here locally. And then in addition to that, our ecosystem, right? Whether it's what we do from a youth hockey, we've got 2 facilities that we own and operate. We've got a 3rd facility that we manage. And then we also have the arena in Henderson that we own and operate in a partnership with the city of Henderson, where our AHL team plays, our Vegas Nighthawks, which is our indoor football team, our partnership with the NBA for G League Ignite, and of course our newest partner at the venue, which is the Vegas Thrill, which is the Pro Volleyball Federation. And so all of that is what I spend my time on. It's really about 7 different businesses, but we want to make sure they're all connected around our core, which is what we do with the Vegas Golden Knights on the ice.
Sounds like a lot of work. And you've been in sports for a long time. Mm-hmm. Before you came to Vegas, you were with the Cleveland Cavaliers.
That's right. Yeah.
Basketball, NBA basketball mm-hmm. team. In some of the time, LeBron was there.
Yeah.
Right. You won a championship there.
We did, yeah, 2016, yeah.
Yeah, and even before that, you were involved in baseball. You were involved in hockey,
yeah,
right, with Dallas hockey. And Carolina.
Carolina, yeah.
And some, and other basketball teams. How did you get involved in sports?
I was like a lot of kids in kind of that late '80s. I was a big sports fan. But I really didn't know about the business of sports. We didn't have like we do today, where they have advanced degrees in sports marketing and sports management. Back then, I was a business major at Oklahoma State University, and I read an article in the local newspaper, the Tulsa World, Tulsa's my hometown, about the general manager of the minor league baseball team. It was the AA Tulsa Drillers. They're affiliated with the Texas Rangers. And I remember reading the article going, that's exactly what I want to do. Because I was thinking like Nike or something like that. I'd go to work for a company like Nike, but it really just caught my attention. So I ended up calling the general manager, and fortunate enough that he said, yeah, come on down someday. I'd love to meet you. And I had a chance to meet him, and within a couple weeks, he actually offered me a job in the food and beverage operation for the team while I was still in school. And that really was the beginning of my career, and was fortunate to get a lot of great opportunities along the way and build and learn. And then to have the chance to come to Las Vegas back in 2016 was really a dream come true, to be involved in a startup in a great city like Las Vegas, but also with the National Hockey League.
And you kind of worked your way up. I mean, you worked
absolutely.
in sales, you worked in all of those
mm-hmm.
departments, equipping you for what you're doing today, I would suspect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, I started out in food and beverage, and then did all the field operations. So if you need me to chalk the lines of a baseball diamond, I certainly could go out and do that. But really, where I was able to really build my career was on the revenue side of the business, in the sales and marketing, sponsorships, ticketing, premium. These businesses don't work without revenue. And I was fortunate along the way to start to have a lot of success, and I enjoyed that side of the business. And so even though I understood what success looked like on the operations side, I really was a sales and marketing leader, and was able to build my career through that side of the business. And like I said, it's led to some terrific opportunities with the Cavaliers. It was 9 years with LeBron, 9 of his 11 in Cleveland. And it was phenomenal.
What's the difference between working for an NBA team mm-hmm. in Cleveland and then 2016? I mean, you got a great job there. Mm-hmm. I mean, living on top of the world. I mean, you just the year before, I guess, I had won a championship.
We did, yeah.
Right, and you get a call from. Well, who did you get a call from?
Well, Bill Foley, who owns our team, actually had hired an executive search firm. And the individual that was leading that organization, he knew about me and my passion for the National Hockey League. He knew I'd only leave my job in Cleveland if it was in the NHL. And it was just the perfect combination of, again, a startup situation with the expansion team in Las Vegas. And I felt like there was a good connection between Bill and I philosophically on the business in terms of what we wanted to do. George McPhee was already on board at that time. He was a part of the interview process. And so that relationship was important. And I was, was fortunate to be selected. And, I've been here since day one. So it's been a lot of fun.
Did you have any concerns about moving and out of Cleveland to Las Vegas? In those days, even 8-10 years ago, we weren't known as a sports town per se, right? Nobody knew if this was going to work here in Las Vegas. You had a bird in the hand in Cleveland with a championship team. You know what you're involved in. You have a community. You have your families there, and your wife, your children, and then you get offered an unknown job in a different city. Were you reluctant at that time?
I don't think I was reluctant. I was familiar with some of the narrative that was out there that the NHL was actually receiving, that this was really a bad idea to put a hockey team in the desert here in Las Vegas, and I never believed in that narrative. I don't believe there's bad markets. I believe there's bad operators, and I really felt that if you had the right people with the right opportunity and the right ownership who was engaged and invested in what the vision of the organization was, that you could be successful. And we've been able to put all three of those together, and we've had a lot of success on the ice, but we've also had a lot of success off the ice, and it's made for a really terrific situation here, and it's one that we have a lot of pride in. The ecosystem of youth hockey, for example, when we got here was almost non-existent. There was some youth hockey. There were about 3 sheets of ice. But where it was back in 2016 to where it is today is a real source of pride for the organization. So that ecosystem, those future fans. And so we really, truly built it from scratch. And that's, like I said, that's very rewarding. But did I have concerns? They were more on the other narratives you hear about Las Vegas, about, well, where are you going to live? I was that person.
The schools,
I didn't know. I didn't know. I thought, I only associated this market with the Las Vegas Strip, which is really unfortunate. And I think we've done a much better job as a community, because I love to joke around. It's like, look, we have, believe it or not, we have grocery stores, and we have churches, and we actually do have schools, and people actually don't live in high-rise buildings. Now some do. That's great. But this is really an unbelievable place to live. And my quick favorite story is coming in for the interview. I'm on the 215. Mr. Foley had a car service for us. We're driving out to the Red Rock Resort where we were going to be staying. And I said to my wife as we got to about town center, I looked and I said, Las Vegas actually is surrounded by mountains. I never even knew that. But I started looking around. And, and I'd been to Las Vegas at least a dozen times, maybe 15 times prior to that. And I never knew that it was surrounded by the beauty that it is with all the mountains. And so we've fallen in love with it. And at some point, down the road, we're going to retire here. We just really like the community a lot.
I remember either reading or talking to you in those early days, 2016, 2017. Las Vegas had always been known as the entertainment capital of the world. You said at that time, one day we would become the sports capital of the world. And you were right.
Right.
We are now. Would you agree, the sports capital of the world?
Yeah, I think, we like to kind of pair it with entertainment, because really at the end of the day, sports is entertainment at its core, and so it's the sports and entertainment capital. But what we could see happening early on was what's really important in building a narrative like that, which is you've got the NHL team that was coming shortly thereafter. You remember the Raiders were coming, but you also had facilities that were being built. T-Mobile, which was an important part of that. Allegiant Stadium was an important part of that. And then some of the laws that were starting to evolve with, what was happening at the federal level, as they were basically saying, look, we're no longer going to regulate sports gaming. We're going to allow the states to make those decisions. That was a really important part of that. Yeah. And you could see how that was going to evolve, which now I think there's close to almost 40 states now that have legalized sports gambling. And then at the collegiate level, them basically saying, you know what, we're no longer going to not go to a market like Las Vegas for our big events. And so you've got that. And then we knew that eventually if you build a stadium and you get an NFL team, there's going to be a Super Bowl here. And of course we just had that. And so there was a lot of the kind of the foundation that was happening at that time that you knew would evolve into what we have now. And it's crazy, Ed. And when you think about, just last week we had 5 college basketball conference championships right here in Las Vegas. 5 separate conferences. Most markets have 1. We had 5. And so that's just like another week in our market, right? And then you think about what we do with NASCAR, the big events that we have with UFC, Super Bowl, and of course we got Formula One and the commitment that we have from that. And so you just start to piece it all together. And then, oh, by the way, here come the Oakland A's. We're going to build a beautiful stadium down at Las Vegas Boulevard in Tropicana, which will be incredible once that gets done. And then, of course, we've all heard the rumors about the NBA. And so all of that you could see potentially happening back in 2016, 2017. And I'm proud that our organization was really a catalyst early on to that new, exciting narrative, because it helps diversify what this community is, and we're excited to be a part of it.
I was going to say, you were a big part of it, Mr. Bubolz, a big part of that success, because had not the Knights had the success that it had, maybe these things would have eventually developed, but not as quickly as they have.
Right.
You won a championship, I mentioned earlier, at the NBA with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Then you won the Stanley Cup here.
Right.
Describe the differences between those two experiences for you. I mean, the first one, obviously had to be big, and especially in Cleveland. I mean, if I recall correctly, LeBron had left Cleveland.
Yes.
Right? He grew up there.
He grew up in Akron.
Right, nearby. Left Cleveland, went down to Florida, played down there, and then Cleveland was so happy to get him back. He comes back, and you guys win an NBA championship. You get the ring, the whole bit, right? It must have been an incredible experience.
It was an amazing experience because if you follow kind of the Cleveland sports history, they had their own kind of woe is me scenario, because they hadn't had a major professional sports championship since 1964. So that's a long time. That was the Cleveland Browns. When we won in 2016, the Indians and the Cavaliers, had been around for a long time. Cavaliers north of 50 years. Right. The Indians hadn't won since 1948. And so there were all these near misses in professional sports. And so for us to finally get over the hump and actually win was really incredible. What I remember most about it, though, was that I didn't believe it was going to happen, because first of all, if you remember, the Golden State was who we played that year. They had the best record in the history of the NBA. They went 73-9 that year, which is unbelievable. Yes. We get into the series, and before we knew it, we were down 3-1. And I remember driving home from the game that night going, well, it's just not going to happen for us this year. We got it. I was almost starting to think about next year, but then something magical happened. They had lost 1 game the entire season at home. We went back to Game 5, and all of a sudden the switch flipped. We won Game 5. We came back home. We won Game 6. Now we were going back to Oakland for Game 7, and we won that game. And of course, it was just incredible. But you asked the question, like, what was different about it for me? Being a part of that long-standing history and then actually seeing it happen, that just how the community, there was so much relief and excitement, and it was just absolute.
Changed the identity of Cleveland for that year.
I think it did. Yeah, it was. People started to stick their chest out. They were proud to say they were from Cleveland, where before, all the negative things about the mistake on the lake and all the near misses with sports. So it was fun to be a part of that, actually getting over the hump there. But the biggest difference for me was I've always been such an NHL hockey fan, and to win at home. So we won. We won in Oakland. Well, I was in Cleveland when we won, which was still a lot of fun. But to be down on the ice when the cup was being presented, to see the reaction of our players and our coaching staff and George and Kelly and Mr. Foley, and be down there and be a part of that celebration. I'll never forget it. And then I got my 20 seconds where I got to hold the cup and actually, raise it over my head like everybody else.
Right.
I'll never forget that. That was truly special.
And of course, they got the ring.
We got the ring. That's right.
Yeah. Which I didn't realize that inside the ring it said "the cup in 6," which
right.
is the quote that Mr. Foley made. In fact, he even made it on our TV show in 2017, before the first game.
My goal is to win the Stanley Cup in 6 or 7. Period.
Well, amazing.
Well, it's
That's an
because
amazing story.
he always believed it would happen. He didn't believe just because we were an expansion team that it would have to take 20 years, or in some case, there's organizations that have been around over 50 years that still haven't won in the NHL. And so, but if you put the right vision together with the right people, and then you go out and you bring the right players into your organization and get them on the same page, like our hockey group did, special things can happen, and it happened for us last season.
One of your responsibilities also is working with the TV, the broadcasting, the media. Currently, you're airing in multiple markets,
right?
Idaho, Montana, Arizona, California, Utah,
right?
And other parts of Nevada. How important is that in your business plan?
Well, it was important early on because if you think about Las Vegas, it's the 40th largest television market, which isn't a very large market. And then you look at the entire state of Nevada. There's north of 3 million people, 3.2, 3.3 million, but that's not a lot of population when you think about other markets in the National Hockey League that we're competing against. And so what they said was, here's your core market, but we're going to give you access to a broader outer market, even though it's going to be on a shared basis with other teams, for example, like Colorado or San Jose or the new team in Seattle. And so they identified this market that it's more what you'd call kind of like the Mountain West, right? You think about that conference where a lot of those teams are. And so early on, we wanted to have distribution. So TV was an important part of that. Where we could, we wanted to have distribution through radio. And so our broadcast network goes very aggressively throughout the state and other places in Utah. And then we wanted to make sure that we weren't just distributing the games, but that fans in those markets, if they were fans of our team, had access to the organization. And so every year since day one, other than the COVID year, we've actually taken a bus trip and we've gone up to markets like Reno, up to Boise, up to Laramie, Wyoming, up into Montana with Butte and Missoula, into markets like Salt Lake, St. George. So if you think about that territory, we've been able to build fans throughout the Mountain West, and that was an important mission. And it all starts with Bill Foley. I can remember having those conversations. Like, look, we have this territory. We got to figure out how we're going to distribute our product to those fans in those areas who maybe right now haven't picked their fandom from an NHL perspective. And it's fun when we go into those markets because we know what's worked. And we've played several exhibition games in Salt Lake against the Kings, and those are home games for us. Last year we played a game up in Boise, and same thing. It's a home game for the Knights, and I'm proud that we've been able to kind of make those markets Knights fans.
How important are the Silver Knights to the team?
Huge. You see it from a hockey development perspective, and again, the quick version of why it's such an easy decision for us. The first 3 years that we were an organization with the Knights, our AHL team was actually in Chicago. So all of our best prospects, Zach Whitecloud, Nick Hague, Nicholas Waugh, these guys were all playing in Chicago. And unfortunately for them, when we called them up or sent them back to the AHL, that was not an easy transition, right? They were having to make...
You're going to fly in from Chicago to get to the game.
Yeah, it was a 3-hour situation where now it's a 20-minute ride from Henderson, right? And so you can start to see how as our roster at the NHL level needs to evolve because of injuries and other factors that come into play. Now we can make those decisions and bring those players back and forth, and it just provides a lot more connectivity. And then on top of that, it's real easy for George and Kelly and our scouting group to see all of our players, not just our players at the AHL level, but all players at the AHL level, because it's just right. You make the run on the 215, and you get off on Green Valley Parkway, and you're right there at our facility. It's a beautiful building, 6,000 seats, and And so it really was an important decision for us to bring it here. And then purely on the business side, we saw a marketplace that could not access NHL games on a regular basis, or our games on a regular basis, because of the average ticket price. And we really felt there was a family demographic at a lower price point that still they wanted to follow the team at a more regular basis, but just cost was a barrier. And so the tickets they're actually on average about $100 cheaper than the average ticket price for the NHL game with the Golden Knights. And it's a terrific event. If folks haven't been out to a Silver Knights game, they should come.
Are NHL tickets, generally speaking, more expensive than basketball or baseball or football tickets?
They really are, and mostly because if you look at our revenue pie, if you will, the largest by far is local revenues and local ticket revenues. We don't have the national media rights or international media rights that the NFL has, for example, or the NBA, and so for us to compete from a revenue perspective, at the major league level, you need to really drive gate revenue, and so it is our single most important revenue stream, and that's why they're on average higher than the other four sports that we've talked about.
When you win a Stanley Cup, what does it mean financially to the team?
Well, I'll give you a couple of examples, because not all of them are positive financial impacts. So, for example, the Stanley Cup, what an amazing experience, right?
Yeah.
You get to take that cup for about 100 days and travel it around the globe with the players and the scouts and all the people that contributed to making that happen.
Right.
And you just think that that's just kind of part of winning, I
would assume that the NHL would pay for that. You're going to tell me I'm wrong.
Literally the next day we had a call. They were explaining to us the process, and part of the process is, hey, just want to make sure you guys have planned for this. It costs on average between $500,000 and $600,000 a year when we do this in other markets. So just kind of know that that's coming. So it's like, okay, we didn't see that one. Certainly they don't tell you that prior to winning.
Right.
The parade, which was a magical experience, but that was not inexpensive. We wanted to do it the right way. We wanted to provide a fun environment for our players, their families, everybody that contributed, our fans, and we wanted to do it in a safe way, right? But when you start to think about the logistics of what we put on, it was not insignificant in terms of the cost.
There's a charge for the police and the county, right?
All of it, yeah. And by the way, they were amazing in terms of their support for what we wanted to do and our vision for the parade. But those are all the things that kind of come with it. The cost of championship rings. They don't say, here's a budget because great job, you won. Go buy some rings. No. It doesn't work that way. It's on the team to bear that responsibility.
But there's additional TV revenue and positives as well.
There are, and I only joke about those because you don't think about those when there's just so much euphoria and the excitement of the win. But on the business side, obviously from corporate partners, sponsors, and our ability to grow those revenues, our ability to then go back and charge more for other revenue streams like ticketing. You mentioned media rights, which is important on a local basis. And so, yes, there are all variables that come into play that are positive from that perspective. But there's also another side of that equation that you sometimes don't see, or a lot of fans don't see maybe.
Our team has been very active in the community with the Knights Foundation, with and everybody personally. I mean, you mentioned that you're very active in the community. You sit on the board of numerous charitable committees in town. The Knights are very present with a lot of community and charitable events. I guess to a certain extent this happens in every city with most teams, but it seems to me that there's a much greater integration between the Knights and Las Vegas, and whether it's October 1, whether it's creating a new market with a new team. It's kind of like giving birth to a child.
Right.
I mean, are those the factors that separate?
Yeah, it really is, and I also because I think this is really important. It was very intentional on the part of the organization early on. And again, it was something that Bill Foley had talked a lot about But we really kind of use the analogy of a three-legged stool. What were going to be our three legs? One, we wanted to have as fast as we could the best competitive hockey organization that we could possibly put together, and I believe we've done that. Number two was we wanted to have the best fan experience. This is, again, we're coming into the entertainment capital. We wanted to have our brand sit alongside of the other great entertainment brands that are in this market, and there's a lot of them, by the way, right? And number three, we wanted to be known for our connection to the community. We have a saying, part of our Knights code, that goes like this: hockey's a contact sport, or excuse me, community's a contact sport just like hockey. So community's a contact sport just like hockey. So we were proactively going to go to the community as opposed to waiting for it to come to us. And so making sure that expectation with our players, with our organization, is set early on, and that's what we did, and I believe we've done that. And again, I'm proud of it, because it's such, when we ask people, well, tell us about the Knights organization. If they were coming, a lot of times, they won't talk about what we do on the ice. They'll talk about what we do off the ice in the community. And again, that's a great source of pride, because it was intentional. And it's important. It's really important.
And the players are very active in that. I mean, and hockey players in general, I mean, you get this, I don't know, blue collar, work ethic, and I mean, everybody is just so accessible. We're just about out of time. As we're closing down the show here, what's your prediction? Where are we going to end up this year?
Well, we're going to make the playoffs.
Okay.
We got to get that piece first. And then,
15 seconds.
Then anything can happen. You got to go after it. And I know from a coaching and an ownership perspective, our expectation is we're going to get back and do what we expected to do, which is to try and win this thing again.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate it.